Welcome to the Wealth by Choice podcast. My name is Valerie Shira, and I'm a stay-at-home mom who turned entrepreneur. Each week, we bring you stories and wisdom from individuals who have broken the code to generating wealth. Thanks so much for being here with me today. Let's get started. All right, so today I have Neil Schoepp with me. Neil spent over 40 years in New York City, where he grew up and hit every kid's exacta. First, he became a police officer and then a fireman. Through his 24 years working on the streets of New York City, he came face to face with fear and has found numerous ways of harnessing that power and using that power to take action instead of being paralyzed by it. Now Neil's on a conquest to help people use the energy that is created by fear to push through and achieve the life they desire. In his free time, Neil enjoys spending time outdoors, mountain biking, fishing, hiking with his wife and 2 children. Neil, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Hey Valerie, how are you?
Doing great.
Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited. No, you have an amazing story, and we've connected through a lot of different multifamily related things, mindset things, and every time I get with you, I feel like you add so much value, and your stories are so interesting, so I'm really looking forward to the podcast today. Can we start by maybe just breaking down your story a little bit? Tell me a little bit more. Maybe go into a little more detail of where you're coming from, what you've gone through, and then we'll kind of pick it apart.
Sure. So when I was 18, I joined the volunteer fire department. And I started off there just wanting to contribute to the community. From there, I went to the police department and then the paid fire department, all within New York City. So the volunteers, the police department, and the fire department were all community-based within New York City. And I was just out there helping people. That's what I really wanted to do. But that W-2 grind, right? Even though I was helping people, I was still in a W-2 grind. Mm-hmm. And that W-2 grind started wearing on me, and I wanted to find something bigger and better. So I did what everybody else does, and I started with Bigger Pockets. And Bigger Pockets introduced me to Gino Barbara from Jake and Gino.
Okay.
And he has been instrumental in changing not only my multifamily education, but my mindset. And once I was able to change the paradigm that I looked at life through, that was like the first domino that knocked all the other dominoes down. So now I want to spread the word that people can change how they make decisions. People could change the choices. People are in charge of their own lives. They don't necessarily have to listen to society. They can go out there and blaze their own path.
Yeah, 100%. And I love, like, everyone starts with the moment that they have that burning desire. It just either flips the switch, they have an event, or it just slowly grows into a desire that they want more. That, and for you, you're working your W-2 job, and you just kind of realize you want more than, being tied to that, married to that for the rest of your life. So, but tell me a little bit more, the fireman, the police officer, I'm sure you have tons of really interesting stories, but, you talk a lot about fear. Can you share with us just a little bit of maybe either something you went through or what it was that helped you realize that fear has more powers than the power to stop you?
Based around fear, I always go back to, and you've heard this story before, but I've always gone back to the mantra. What is your mantra? And my mantra was, I was a brand new police officer. I was sitting in a patrol car. I went on my first gun run. It was a robbery in progress in a store. We pull up to the store. The suspect comes out of the store, runs down the sidewalk. And now my partner, who's a senior man, he's got probably 12 years on the job. He jumps out of the car and he starts chasing him. So I don't know what I'm doing. I only got like 2 or 3 weeks on the streets. So I jump out of the car and I run after the senior man. Like I'm just going to kind of mimic what he's doing. And we get to a corner, and the suspect goes around the corner. The senior man goes right around the corner. And when I was in the academy, they would tell me, don't go right around corners. Don't take them blindly. You got to take them slowly and methodically, because you don't know what's on the other side of that corner. You lost sight of the suspect. Sure. And this guy's got a gun. So now I'm approaching this corner. I have to make that split-second decision of, do I go around that corner immediately and stay locked in step with my partner, because I'm kind of his backup, right? I'm his protection. Or do I do what the academy told me to do? And I take it slow and methodically. And if I do that, that means my partner is with this suspect that much longer. And there's a bigger gap between us. So I get to that corner and I have to make that split-second decision. And I decided just to jump around that corner. And to my relief, my partner placed the suspect under arrest. But later on, I went to him and I said, Jack, like, how'd you go around that corner so quickly? Weren't you afraid? And he said, if I don't go around that corner, then who will? If I don't go around that corner, then he gets to terrorize somebody another day. Not on my watch. And he just walked away. He left it right there, like he just cut it off. And I stood there and I was thinking, not on my watch. Not on my watch. And then I found that became my mantra. And what I mean by that is every time I was facing an uncertain situation, whether that was chasing a suspect down the sidewalk, crawling down a smoke-filled hallway at a fire, a car accident, a pin job on the highway, like whenever I was facing that fear, that danger, that story would pop back into my mind, and I'd be like, not on my watch, not on my watch. And it separated me going down the fear path to me going down the path that I can take care of the situation.
Sure.
And it reset my brain. And that reset stopped that autopilot so that I was able to move forward. And that was the first time. And I didn't realize this in the moment. You got to remember that. Like, I didn't realize this for years later that I was doing this. But in that moment, my mind was resetting, and now I could be in the present moment as opposed to just operating out of my mind's fear or my mind's autopilotness. And that was the moment that I really was first introduced to fear, and I broke through it. And that phrase that Jack gave me, not on my watch, I still use that to this day. I still use that to signing loan documents, right? Like, it's not easy to buy a property. Everybody's telling you how the property is going to, like, you're going to lose all your money. Or if I decide to buy a stock or make an investment or join a partnership, there's always fear that creeps in. I use not on my watch as that pause, like, reset the brain, and then we can reassess the situation and we can move forward as opposed to kind of hide in the corner type thing.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So, like, okay, if I were to do that, do I just pick a mantra? Do I have to, like, you went through an experience and it was kind of given to you in a sense. How does a person, if they recognize they have the fear, because I mean, I'll be honest, I have it at times. I mean, a lot of times I'll feel that fear and it's like I have that choice. I'm either going to turn back and say I can't do that, or I'm afraid of the outcome. Do you just pick something and that's kind of what you own and you say that, or how do you go about that?
So everybody has some type of experience that they went through.
Okay.
Right? They've had some kind of fear, whether it was on a grand scale or a smaller scale, but they've pushed through that fear. So if you can pinpoint what it was that you were able to push through with, you can use that.
Okay.
But in actuality, in reality, it could be anything. Like, instead of me saying not on my watch, I could say rabbits. Right? I could say literally anything. Because in that phrase, and it doesn't matter what that phrase is, when you hear that phrase, when you say that phrase, when you relate to that phrase, all that phrase is doing is saying, hold on a second, let's take a pause here. I'm feeling that fear conjure up in my belly. Rabbits. Okay, the fear's here. Why is the fear here? Is the fear real? Is it just anxiety? What story am I telling myself? And then you can move forward from that.
So it's basically a snap into reality. You're using that to trigger your brain to just stop for a second and analyze the situation. So it's not necessarily, I see what you're saying, it's not necessarily what it is. It's just, it's a mechanism to snap you into reality for a second.
Yes, it could be literally anything because you're snapping yourself into reality. When I feel those butterflies in my belly and I feel that fear coming on, I use that as a yield sign. Fear is something that's very, very real. But the interesting thing about that feeling of fear is fear and excitement, physiology-wise in the body, display themselves in the same manner. Sweaty palms, increased heartbeat, increased respirations. You might get sweaty armpits, right? The big difference between going down the fear path and going down the excitement path is the story that you're telling yourself. That mantra makes that break, and you can't automatically tell the scary story. That mantra allows you to stop, take a breath, assess, and then move forward.
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize how much of their life is on automation. Like they're not even thinking about it. They're just doing something, and you react to it. Something happens, and this is the common reaction. So yeah, having something that stops the reaction and actually lets you decide what you're going to, what kind of story are you giving the situation? Because really, I mean, everything is relative to how we interpret it. So, if you're just kind of going on just a reactive basis, you're not really choosing what you're doing or what you're saying. You're just kind of going with the flow. So that kind of just breaks up that pattern. Now, I know we've talked a lot in the past about mindset. Let's touch a little bit on that. I know you're big into mindset and how the condition of your mind, what you're feeding your mind, what you're thinking, how that all plays a huge role in success. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Can I touch on what you just said though for a second?
Go for it.
Can I make a comment on that? You touched on autopilot. There's a Harvard study out there that says we spend just under 50% of our day on autopilot.
Wow, that's a lot.
And if you don't believe me, because there's people out there that are like, I don't believe that. Okay, have you ever walked into a dark room during a blackout and immediately went to turn the switch on, even though you knew you were in a blackout?
Sure.
Have you ever driven on the highway past 3 exits and didn't even realize you passed those 3 exits? Or you're driving somewhere in a routine manner, you're driving home from work, and all of a sudden you pull into your driveway, but you don't remember getting off the highway or turning onto your block. We spend a huge portion of our day in autopilot. And that mantra is one way of breaking that autopilotness. And once we break that autopilot, we then get to determine what happens next.
Yeah.
And that's the key to that really is the key to it.
That's awesome.
So your question was mindset. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Kind of just like, how does it play a part in our success? I mean, I know mindset is something that most people don't even think about. Like they just think success is going to work, working hard, whatever. But what's your view on it? What's your take on how does mindset play a part?
I'm out here talking about mindset because it was my one domino that knocked all the other dominoes down. I think that mindset is the pillar to success. So they say that you have to build a strong foundation. And a lot of people will say, go out and build your education first. When I was first breaking into multifamily real estate, everybody says, go out and do a year of education and really understand the lingo, understand the concepts, build that education. I'll take it a step further and say that build your mindset, because your mindset really is the first layer of that foundation. Place that education on top of that mindset and then go from there. Because things are going to go wrong. They're going to. You're going to run into roadblocks. You're going to make bad deals. You're going to, quote unquote, lose the investment. You're going to partner with the wrong individual even though you thought it was the right individual. You're going to hit these roadblocks. The big difference to successful people and non-successful people, I guess you could refer to them out, or people that don't reach success, is the successful people get back up, brush themselves off, and keep moving forward. How do they do that? Because they have that strong mindset. Because they know this is a one-off. It's not the norm. So in building that mindset and in looking through certain lenses at the world, you then have the stability to take those hits and keep moving forward.
Do you find, like, because I know that you're actually a life coach, and I'm just curious, are there specific roadblocks or mindset blocks that are common, just like a few right out the gate that a lot of people struggle with that you kind of see on a regular basis?
So they don't believe in themselves.
Okay.
They don't believe in following their intuition. They don't believe that they actually have the answers. As a coach, I don't give answers to anyone. I draw out the answers from you. You actually know what you should be doing. I draw that out. I shine a light on that. And I give you the confidence to act on that. So you already have it in you. It's my job to draw it out of you.
So, like, you know, if somebody's struggling with that, like, I mean, you hit a very common, like, I would struggle with that too, feeling like I'm not capable, or, you know, I'm shooting for the stars and think, like, I'll never actually get there. You know, what is something that a person could do if they're struggling with that? Like, just not believing in themselves.
So do you really think that Jeff Bezos thought that he would create the company that he created when he first was walking in Central Park with his mentor saying, I'm thinking about selling books online? Listen, I don't care how big you're thinking. He didn't think that Amazon was going to be the Goliath it is right now. That gradually came about. Right? So just having your mindset in the fact that it can be done. Surrounding yourself with individuals that are doing what you want to do.
That's huge.
That is so huge. I was just talking to, Nico. I was just talking to Nico, and that's what we were saying, how, like, the mastermind is so important because you're around those individuals, and if you run into a problem, I can pick up my phone and solve any problem I need solved. Because people that are ahead of me, that have already faced that, I'm talking to them. I'm friends with them. They're in my network. So that eliminates a lot of the fear, right? Like, if I'm going out to buy a multifamily property, and now I'm at, like, the financing stage, and I've never spoken to a bank before, let's say, that's going to create a lot of anxiety for me. A lot of fear. Am I going to say the wrong things? What do I need? All I have to do is pick up a phone, call somebody in my network and be like, listen, I'm going to go talk to a couple of community banks today. What are some of the things that they're going to ask of me? And now I'm prepared when I walk in because of my network. So getting in the room with people that are doing things that you want to do and people that are slightly ahead of where you want to be is a huge, huge part of it. Sure. Like, it's that mastermind element that Napoleon Hill talks about is right on the money.
And I think too, something that has helped me is doing, even if there's small things, noticing a pattern of success, even if it's, something small, recognizing that it's like, okay, I said I would do this and I did do it. That's awesome. Now what's the next thing? And taking those wins and actually recognizing them and not glazing over them or discrediting them, because sometimes if the only thing we're doing is looking ahead, we forget that we are making progress. It may not seem like it because those ahead of us are making progress too. And so sometimes it seems like there's no progress being made, but if you turn around, there usually is.
You touched on two real key points there, right? And gap and gain. Pay attention to the gain. Don't worry about the gap. Because if you pay attention to the gain and you constantly take those small actions, the gap will disappear. Don't compare yourself to others. Right? So I only have 53 doors. Only have 53 doors. And I look at people that have 500 and 1,000 and 3,000. And I'm like, they have so much. I'm exactly where I belong on my journey. And that 53 will turn into whatever I choose to turn it into.
Sure.
everybody's journey is different. So just because they have 1,000 doors doesn't mean that I need to have 1,000 doors right now. Stop comparing yourself to others. The other key thing you hit upon is tiny habits. You said I have to take small little actions, right? BJ Fogg is the father of tiny habits. He literally wrote the book titled Tiny Habits. And what he says is starting off exactly how you said to start off. Tiny little things. So if I want to run a marathon, I don't start off going outside and walking around the track. That's not the first step. The first step is I take my jogging shoes and I put them by the front door. And that's it. That's my first step. The second day is I put those jogging shoes on. And then I take them off. The third day, I lace them up. The fourth day, I walk down my driveway, I come back. And you gradually build up until you're walking around your block. You're running to the corner, you're walking to the next corner, you're running, and you gradually build that up. Those tiny little habits. And then revel in the fact that you put your running shoes out. Revel in the fact that you walk down the driveway. That's achievement. And that builds that little bit of momentum, and then you're off to the races. We've all had a car that broke down. We all tried pushing that car. When you push a car, in the very beginning, it's very hard to get that car rolling. Like you're struggling, you're pushing, you're struggling, you're putting all your might into it. Some other guy from across the street comes running over and he's helping you because he sees how hard you're struggling. Somebody else comes and helps you. And now there's three of you. That car starts rolling. The beauty of it is, though, that after that car starts rolling and that car gets momentum, you're kind of just like leisurely jogging behind it, just keeping that momentum up. You have to start small, build that momentum, and as you get that momentum, it gets easier.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very hard to build that momentum.
Yeah. And you know, if somebody's willing to stick through that in the beginning, I mean, it like you said, it does get easy. It's just if you're able to have support in the beginning or just the motivation, the desire to get it started, it does absolutely get easier. Another thing that just kind of makes me think of as far as building confidence and belief in yourself is, I forget where I read somewhere that was talking about integrity. It's not like... What typically people think of as integrity is doing what you would say you told others that you would do. So like if I told you, something that, I would do, I did it. But integrity is actually keeping your word to yourself. That's where it starts. And so many people don't take integrity to that level. Because honestly, who's the one person that it's easiest to lie to? It's yourself, because nobody knows. And I just, when I heard that, it just really flipped a switch. And I thought, you know what? If I don't believe myself, it's probably because I don't have integrity with myself. I'm not keeping my word to myself. If I said I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock, if I don't get up, I lied to myself and I just broke a little bit of trust with myself. No wonder I don't believe that I'm going to have 1,000 units or whatever goal that I'm working towards. And so that's something that really has changed the way that I look at, things that I do.
Yes, and I'll say that story to myself, that exact story. Like if I'm out on a run, and now I'm on the backside of the building and nobody can see me, well, I could stop and walk because they're not going to know that I didn't run the whole thing. And then when I get back to the front of the building, now I'm running. Like everybody's going to think I ran the whole distance,
right?
But I will know the truth. And you're correct. If I lie to myself, it's just like lying to someone else. It starts off with a little lie, and then those lies get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and I don't have that integrity. So I define integrity the same way. I really define integrity in not only doing what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it, but doing it even when no one else is around. So if I'm an honest person, then I'm honest all the time. I'm not just honest when Valerie's sitting next to me.
Right.
So integrity is exactly that. Like having integrity with yourself and not lying to yourself is where it starts. And it's the root of it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's touch on another limiting belief real quick. One that I know a lot of people struggle with, and I still struggle with. And it's the limiting belief about wealth, about money. What are some common things that people feel about money? I mean, I know just some off the top of my head is money is evil, rich people are awful, all those kind of things that just are common thoughts about money, or that we should not strive to become either wealthy or successful. What are some of the thoughts, or maybe some of the things you see?
Holy cow, how much time do you have?
I know exactly right.
So I'll start with my experience
Sure.
first, right? I had all of those beliefs, right? The rich are evil. Mm-hmm. They just want to take your money. Money's the root of all evil, right? All of those beliefs. Money doesn't grow on trees. All of that stuff. The funny thing is that when I started to actually talk to wealthy people, and by wealthy people, I'm talking at least a net worth of $5 million or more. Mm-hmm. That's my definition of wealthy. Mm-hmm. I haven't met an individual yet that hasn't been willing to help me along. Hasn't been willing. We all say time's your most valuable commodity, right? And if you're an individual that has a high net worth, then your time must be worth a considerable amount.
Sure.
But yet, they're still willing to help little old me. I've never seen or come across someone that as long as I'm not wasting their time, they won't give me their time. So, in actuality, wealthy individuals will help you. They will answer your emails. They will answer your questions. It's just a matter of don't waste time. And what I mean by that is, if you were to contact me and say, listen, what's the first thing I should do to get into real estate, right? And I told you, okay, well, let's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Now, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's not really a real estate book. Mm-hmm. So you may think that I'm out of my mind by suggesting that. But I want to frame your mindset properly first. I want you to understand assets and liabilities and all of that stuff. So do you actually go out and read this book that you don't believe has anything to do with real estate and come back to me with your takeaways? Or do you just blow me off? If you blow me off, you're wasting my time. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give you any more of my time. But if you read the book, you come back with your takeaways. You're like, yeah, right, I did this, and this. I have a question about this. And we have a conversation. That then goes deeper, and that starts, okay, now I'll give you another book or another technique or another strategy. Mm-hmm. And I add to that, and that's how you build that relationship out. So wealthy people are very giving individuals. Another thing about wealth is a lot of times people base wealth on dollars. Doesn't necessarily have to be dollars.
Sure.
Right? You could be wealthy in the things that you do, in the contributions you make to society. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need millions and millions of dollars. Right? Successful, wealthy individuals can be individuals that you set the definition to what wealth and success is to yourself. Mm-hmm. Mother Teresa was, in my opinion, was both of those things. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the poorest people in the world, dollar-wise.
Sure.
Right? But she was wealthy in so many other ways, people clamored to be around her. So you have to make that decision of what wealth means to you. Wealth, success, right? So what is success? What is money? Money is just a tool. I get a lot of limiting beliefs around money itself. Mm-hmm. Money's just a tool. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Money's no different than a hammer, right? A carpenter uses a hammer and a nail to build a house. Business people use money to build wealth. Mm-hmm. It really does dwindle down to that simplicity.
Sure.
So looking at money, not as something that I have to guard and nobody's allowed to have, but as a tool that I have to put out there so that it comes back to me more. Money are little soldiers. I look at money as little army guys, like little soldiers. Mm-hmm. And I send those soldiers out there to work, and then I tell them, bring back your friends. And they go out and they work and they bring back their friends, and now my wealth goes up. And then I send a portion of their friends out to go get more friends. And that's the velocity of money.
Sure.
Right? I send the money out, the money works, the money comes back. It's purely just a tool. It's not something that I have to guard in my pillowcase. It's just a tool.
Yeah.
And when you look at it as just a tool, it's a different paradigm. You're not looking to constantly guard it, and you're not fixated over it.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong, all right, well, this went wrong. I know that when I go into deals, some of those deals aren't going to be home runs. It's part of the process. I know that if I open this business, it may actually fail. But there's going to be key takeaways that I'm going to apply to my next business. So money, if I can employ one paradigm shift, money is a tool, no different than a hammer.
Sure, I love that. And I think kind of what comes to my mind is that, and then the other side that I see is somebody who wants to be successful and they want to generate wealth, but they may not realize it, but subconsciously they're criticizing or thinking negatively of wealth. And I recently have been reading T. Harv Eker's book again. I think it's The Millionaire Mind. And he talks about that. He talks about how even him, what we would consider a high level of success, seeing somebody on the TV about being wealthy, and subconsciously he just started thinking, oh yeah, sure, I'm sure you just did that to give it away or whatever. I forget what he said, but I think a lot of times I'll catch myself doing that too. Almost like, I'm criticizing what I'm trying to attain myself. And I think sometimes people don't even realize they're doing that. And it kind of goes down to like those beliefs that you're saying. And I think becoming aware of that you're doing that, or aware that it even exists, is the first step. And that's the part, that's what gets me excited, is that if people realize that might be holding them back, they're already on the first step towards breaking that.
Yes.
Now they know, instead of, if you're in the dark and you don't even realize you have a problem, or you don't even realize it's there, you can't do anything about it because you're not aware of it. So, becoming aware of that can really be the first big step that you take.
Can I share a tool with you?
Absolutely.
So I developed a system to become aware.
Okay.
Right? Because we go back to, we live autopilot, 50% of our day we live autopilot. In addition to that, the National Science Foundation came out with a study. And that study is that we have roughly 50,000 thoughts per day.
Wow.
85% of those thoughts are negative.
Oh, no.
90% are repetitive.
Wow.
So if we're constantly having negative thoughts, and we're constantly repeating those negative thoughts, how are we supposed to get out of that conundrum? Right? It's like we're on a racetrack and we're running around in a circle at 100 miles an hour with negative, negative, negative. How do we get over to the racetrack that's positive, positive, positive? And when I read that study, I said to myself, if I can just steal 10%, so if I can dwindle that negative, that 80% negative thoughts, if I can dwindle that down to 70%, I have a 10% advantage over everybody else.
Wow.
If I guaranteed you a 10% return on your money, a lot of people would be like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, I want to be in on that investment. You guarantee me a 10% return? Well, if I can dwindle that negative down to 70% or 60% or 50%, how much more could you accomplish? How much more could you go out there and crush? So what I do is I become aware of the thought. I interrupt the thought. We spoke a little bit about that. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. And then I replace the thought.
Okay.
So I become aware of it. The easiest way I use to become aware, besides that mantra, is in Japan, in their rail system, they had a lot of problems with people getting hurt in their rail system. So they came up with a technique called Shishikenko. And it literally translates to point and call. So they will point to a green signal and say, green signal, go. Red signal, stop. The left is clear, the right is clear, the platform is clear, the train may go. I practice that all the time. We can practice that right now. Your listeners can practice that. You look at something and you identify it. And what that's doing is it's bringing you back into the present moment.
Okay.
And the more you live in the present moment, the more you're living in intentionality, not in autopilotness. That's a new word. I'm going to trademark that word. Right? So if I'm not in autopilot and I'm living intentionally, then I get to make the choices.
Sure.
My mind, my unconscious, isn't making the choices for me. So that's how I practice awareness. I become aware of whatever the thought is that I'm having. Then I interrupt that thought, and by interrupting, I just simply ask a question: is the thought serving me? And if it's not serving me, I kick it to the curb.
Okay.
I just say, thanks, bro. I know you're looking out for me, but I'm going to choose to believe in this. I'm going to choose to pay attention to this. I'm going to choose to think this. And then I turn that thought 180 degrees. I can't becomes I can. I don't becomes I do. I'm not becomes I am. And in that, I'm training my brain to stay aware of the thoughts that I'm having and then changing those thoughts slowly. Now, you just heard this strategy. You're all excited. I'm going to use it. And then 3 hours from now, you're going to be like, I had that thought. I didn't use it. I'm such an idiot. No, you're not. Because the first step is become aware. So you just became aware. Even though it's 3 hours later, you just became aware. Mm-hmm. Run the process. I'm aware of the thought. Interrupt the thought. If it's not serving you, kick it to the side. Turn it 180 degrees. And as you start doing this, it'll be 3 hours out. And then it'll be an hour out. And then it'll be within the moment. And then it'll be you're replacing that bad autopilot. And you're going to automatically start doing this. Mm-hmm. And you're not even going to realize you're doing it. And that's the real jet fuel that's going to propel it.
Wow. I love it. I love that, Neil. That's awesome. That's a really good tool to use. And what I've done in different times when I have something like that is I'll write it on an index card or something, and I'll carry it with me because I'll see it throughout the day. I'll put it in my pocket, put it in my purse, put it in. So you start seeing it because you're right. It's repetition. It's over and over. I mean, you've repeated the negative. You've got it there. You've got it right there. We've repeated these negative things so often. They're habit. You don't think about them. So you have to kind of do the same thing to these positive things or these interruptions, like you're saying. So yeah,
yes,
I absolutely love it.
It's Post-its. It's alarms. Mm-hmm. It's the locked screen on your phone. It's the locked screen on your computer. Mm-hmm. It's writing it on a mirror.
Yep.
I know somebody that takes a hot, steamy shower, writes the message on the mirror, and then leaves. And now every time they come out of the shower, the message appears on the mirror.
Oh, wow,
it's like magic.
Awesome.
It works for them. So find the system that works for you and use that system, right? That system could be as simple as so I have a rubber little bracelet on, right? So I can associate this rubber bracelet with something specific. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, I'm wearing this bracelet. This happens to be a Jake and Gino bracelet, by the way, guys. So did I work on my multifamily portfolio today?
Sure.
And every time I look at this bracelet, I could say, all right, well, did I? And if I didn't, then I have to work on it. So it's just, again, living in that intentionality of I'm going to work on something as opposed to the autopilotness of sitting on the couch and watching Netflix episode after episode or scrolling through my phone constantly.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Neil, I'm going to start wrapping this up. You always have so much. I always enjoy talking to you because you have so much practical stuff that anybody can use on any level. If you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, all of this stuff applies. And so I love that. But one last question. Are there any specific books that have stood out to you that are just home runs? I have a lot of them, and I have a hard time narrowing it down. But if you were to pick a couple, what would you throw out there for the listeners to read that you just feel like were fantastic?
So I will go with a typical book that's always mentioned. I almost hate mentioning it because it's always mentioned. But Rich Dad Poor Dad it's been a book that's helped so many people.
Sure.
There's like 40 million copies in circulation. It's almost like you have to mention it.
Yeah.
And I consider that a very basic beginner book to get your mind operating in assets and liabilities and kind of the I want to move into the business and investment sector as opposed to the self-employed and W-2 worker.
Sure.
So that's a good beginner book. Another book, I can go on tons and tons and tons. I always give this book out, Energy Leadership. Energy Leadership's Bruce Schneider, and it talks about what we touched upon early in the podcast, perceptions. So this is the book, 7 Levels of Perception, is something that he designed, and he talks about that strategy in the book Energy Leadership.
Okay.
So that's a great book. Habit-wise, I love Atomic Habits. Mindset-wise, Carol Dweck's Mindset's a great book. A more advanced, in-depth book, Mind Works. It's funny how these are just laying around. Honestly, I didn't know you were going to ask me this question. This is what I refer to all the time. Mind Works.
I'm actually working through the
Mind
book right
Works
now.
is-
Yeah, it's excellent.
Is a great book on beliefs, how they're formed, how you can change them. So in the mindset world, it's those books.
Okay.
I'm a multifamily guy. I have to give a shout out to the book Wheelbarrow Profits and The Honeybee.
Yeah.
Those books, if you're looking to dip your toe into multifamily and kind of see if you resonate with that, then that's books that I first started with that got me intrigued in.
Sure. All right, Neil. Well, I know you're a life coach. You're a multifamily investor. How can people reach out to you if they want to talk to you more, if they want to learn more about you? What are some good ways they can reach you?
So they can message me on Facebook.
Okay.
The coaching is Neil Schoepp. My personal page is Neil R. Schoepp.
Okay.
And they can shoot me an email, neil@neilschoepp.com. So it's NeilSchoepp, as in Peter. That comes directly to me. There's no VA. You're actually talking to me. I don't believe in a VA. I believe in building that relationship myself. Those are the best ways of contacting me.
Okay.
And I'm here to add value to you guys. Like reach out to me. Use and abuse me. People helped me. It's my job to help other people. You made a comment of the plaques on the wall behind me. These plaques are set up. It looks like a little staircase on each side, and it looks like the peak of a mountain at the top. And that's specifically to represent that climb, and that it's little steps by little steps. People have helped me. It's my job to help someone else.
Well, thank you, Neil. I really appreciate it. If anybody's listening, if you're interested, go ahead, reach out to Neil. He's a fantastic human being. We've become great friends, and I really appreciate you in my life, Neil. So thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here, Valerie. I'm glad we were able to get together. Crush it.
Make it happen. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took the time to invest in yourself and to learn with me today. If you're interested in joining a group of like-minded people, I want to personally invite you to our free networking group where you can make connections and build relationships with people who are working together to generate wealth. Just click the link that is included in the show notes, and I hope to see you there.